Do you want an easier allotment for the rest of this year? Maybe be more organised. Create a beautiful harvest for this coming season. Maybe be a little bit more self-sufficient. I'm going to give you 5 tasks that will help you create a fantastic growing area for this year. These next 5 tasks will really help you in your effort to grow more on your allotment. Now, number 1 is pruning. Pruning is really beneficial to many plants, trees and shrubs at this time of year. Be it the raspberry canes that you're growing, the currant bushes, your apple trees, your blueberry bushes, whatever it is you're growing, giving it a really good prune at this time of year will give you much better, stronger crop this coming season. Now, each plant does require a different way to prune. You will need to check specifically on ways to prune that particular shrub, bush or fruit tree, because each has a different way of pruning depending on what you want on the actual outcome. Now, at this time of year, it's not everything that you can prune. Some definitely do better either spring or autumn, but my raspberry canes, my autumn fruiting raspberry canes, definitely need trimming back, and that's something that I need to get on with. Also, my currant bushes, these definitely need cutting back, and the best thing about cutting back those kind of things at this time of year, I can actually create more plants for next year by taking hardwood cuttings. It's not complicated. All you need to do as you're taking your cuttings, get a nice healthy stem, cut the top just above that bud and pop it into some soil or some kind of medium. You can even plant it straight into the ground. Now, I've had great success by doing this, but it's a long process, and most of the time it takes several months to up to a year before you can actually physically move that onto a different pot or see any strong visual growing in the ground. But it's a great free way to propagate from those cuttings that would normally just end up on that compost pile. Now, number 2 is mulch. This year I have used straw on our beds, and as you can see, it is frozen solid. It is very cold today. But if you haven't already mulched your beds, seriously consider it. Now, you can use different types of mulches. There's lots of different ways, and all of them can be free. The best way to mulch those beds is homemade compost. Doesn't cost you a bean, just a bit of effort and hard work making it. This gets topped up in the early winter months or even the later winter months, helping to protect that ground. This ground is frozen solid, but with all that extra bit of mulch on top, it really does help the planting depths stay more protected. Now, you can even use leaves. Anything that you've got of organic matter, you can scatter around your bed at this time of year. In fact, using straw will actually help insulate it, especially as we get onto the later months, say February, March, April, just before we're starting to sow or plant our seeds. This will help that soil get to a much warmer temperature a little bit earlier on than just leaving your soil bare. As these all start breaking down, they start to enrich that soil, massively improving your soil health. Now, it's not just those beds that need to be mulched. Your pathways really do benefit from having a nice fresh layer of woodchip. That's if you do woodchip paths. We massively see a difference in flooding and the water retention on our plot. It seems to be the perfect go-to for us. We get this delivered for free from local tree surgeons, and at this time of year they seem to be very busy, especially after all that storm damage. But getting hold of this and topping up those paths will really help towards the rest of the growing year. This will add all that carbon eventually over time back into that soil. Much less slippy at this time of year than those paving slabs. Number 3 is moving perennials. Now this is my rhubarb, and I had every intention this year to move several of these plants. We grew them from seed and they are getting better and better, but we've got multiple plants here and they get too big and overshadow some of these beds. So some of these do need to be moved. And at this time of year, it is the perfect time to do this job. Now I can't do this today because this ground is frozen solid. There's no way I'm going to be getting a spade or a fork down here to move these. But once the frosts have gone and before any new growth appears, I will be digging out some of this rhubarb, leaving enough of that root ball to be able to transplant into another area. Because that's the great thing at this time of year. Loads of these perennials are dormant, and while they're dormant, they can be moved. And there are lots of shrubs and other plants that you can do this with too, taking as much of the root ball with you as possible and putting it into another area that you want to grow. This time of year, it's a great time of year to have a reorganisation of your growing space. For me, it is the rhubarb. This is going to be moved on to somewhere new. But you can also do it with fruit bushes and fruit trees, anything that's a perennial that goes dormant in the winter months. Take as much of that root ball with you as possible and get it into the position that you want it before spring arrives and it starts to bud. There is less chance of shock and less chance of that shrub or plant dying. But remember, things can go wrong. You can lose shrubs and plants and trees if you move them around, especially if you do it too regular. Now don't forget, it's not just that rhubarb you can do that with. I've got blueberries that need to be repotted, giving some fresh soil. This time of year it is perfect so long as they're not too frozen. So hopefully it will thaw out soon. But repotting those blueberries into a slightly bigger pot, giving them more feed, more nutrition from some fresh compost will really help bring on a bountiful crop for this year's growth. Now number 4 is creating new beds. Now on our plot we like to do no dig, and the winter months is the perfect time to be able to create new no dig beds. You've spent your summer months, hopefully, fingers crossed, creating some fantastic homemade compost from all that great free materials that you were able to grab. Creating new beds will give you some new fantastic areas to get plants into in the coming spring. Now, whether you do no dig or digging methods, this time of year, your digging methods really, it's not ideal. You could probably barely get a fork into it. But no dig beds are perfect to be made at this time of year in the quieter months. But creating those no dig beds at this time of year will give you a clear area for you to actually have a think about where you're going to put those beds. Getting you out in this fresh, if not be it very cold air, but it will give you that opportunity to evaluate how you want your growing season to be. Now for my last final tip, which is number 5, is organisation. It is crazy how over the winter months mess can pile up on your allotment, especially if you try to use as much recycled material as possible. And here in the UK, we've had a lot of storm and strong winds over the last few months. So I have got lots of repairs to do, be it greenhouse glass, refixing greenhouses, organising the mess that is accumulated in the greenhouse, in the shed, on the actual plot itself. There is lots of things to tidy up and organise, and at this time of year, with the beautiful sun shining, it is the perfect time to do that. Having a nice clear space when it comes to spring will really help benefit you mentally, as well as some of those physical tasks. There is nothing worse than being so eager to start your new growing season and then realising you've still got to clear up an awful lot of mess. Going into the new growing season with an organised space, or your pots, your soil, your compost, whatever it is that you're using for the new growing season, in the right places. Is there something that you want to build or have ready for the new growing season? This time of year is the perfect place for that. In fact, all our builds, our polytunnels, our greenhouses, our chicken coop, our chicken run, all of those were pretty much built through the winter months because we don't have to concentrate on most of the stuff that's growing. To be honest, I love being outdoors at this time of year, especially if it's not raining. It's a lovely blue sky, but it's very, very cold. But dress warmly, have a hot flask, and keep moving. And let your imagination run wild on your allotment space. Maybe you could make some little cold frames, maybe a small polytunnel, or even erect a small recycled greenhouse. Maybe a brassica cage or a fruit cage. There is plenty of things that you could be doing at this time of year. But if you're not a cold weather person and you prefer to be toasty next to that fire or in a nice warm house, there is still plenty of things you can be doing towards your growing season. It could be simple things like a pen and paper and plotting on where and what you would like to grow at certain times of the year. It could be an app. There are plenty of apps out there that are really good to help you decide when and where to grow. It can be seed buying. There is lots of offers out there at the moment to buy seeds, but be warned, some varieties and some species really do sell out very, very quick. So if there is something that you do want to grow fresh this year, make sure you buy it soon. So if you think that these winter months there is absolutely nothing to do on your growing plot, maybe have a think about the 5 tasks I've already just discussed. Is there anything that you can implement to make this year's growing season the best you've ever had?